Hey everyone, this is Mark Ryan here, and with another collaboration. This is David Clayson, and you should check out his channel. We did a video on the Second Amendment on guns. It doesn't get better than guns in Montana and North Dakota, and so go check out his channel. We went through scenarios on, hey, what if the government does such and such a thing? With guns, should we obey it? And just scenarios with life and death, even. So go check that out. I'll put a link in the description for his channel. And hey, a vaccine, it's in the news. It's come out, reported 90% effective is what they say. And so implications for the church, for traveling, what do you think some of the implications will be? I'll give you a little second to think. I mean, one of the implications I think will happen is, hey, if you're traveling on an airline, give it some time, give it a year, 2 years, whatever. Hey, if you don't have the vaccination, then you cannot travel on an airline I've got family in Georgia. Hey, you can't go to Georgia unless you've had this vaccination, 1 year, 2 years from now. Do you think that's crazy? Do you think that that makes sense? Any thoughts on that?
Give us some men who know the truth.
I think that I can see that happening. I think the vaccine is the mark of the devil, so don't get it. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. But no, I could see that.
Hey,
I mean, they closed down the airlines, or pretty much closed down the airlines when this all started, And if they're willing to close them all down, then they're definitely willing to put on restrictions like that too. And so I could see you needing, like, if you have a passport, or I guess it depends how long the vaccine would last. Would you have to do it yearly or whatever? But I could see them, if you had a passport, then you'd have to get a stamp alongside any other stamp that needs to go in there, or your driver's licenses needing to get that mark on there showing that you've gotten, like for license plates, the yearly tabs, you have to get something like that, and you just continue putting a sticker on it for every year that you get the vaccine to be able to travel on an airplane.
Yeah,
I could see that happening.
That's not crazy. I mean, some states maybe even, hey, if you want to travel to such and such a state, you have to have it. If you're from out of state, do you think that's crazy to think of? Do you think that we could see that in the future?
I can see that happening. Yeah.
Okay. And
I
then
think it would start in California or New York.
New York kind of, and yet now with the Biden-Harris administration, they'll be less on the side of, hey, personal responsibility, I think, is common sense, and more on, hey, the government can tell you to do whatever thing because people's health and safety, they'll say, is at risk. And then at churches, let's say, hey, if you want a mass gathering, if you want over 100 people in the same place, well, you can do it now, but you have to have the vaccine. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't want to put anything on my body or in my body that the government has made. I'm trying to think if there's anything on me right now that I'm wearing that the government has made too, but you know what I mean? You understand what I mean? I don't trust the government that much. I don't. Like, boy, this bastard's crazy, anti-vaxxer.
And there's that stigma there. Hey, if you don't get this vaccine, then you believe in all these conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
And you're putting people at risk, and even just having a job and everything, maybe at a nursing home or something where you're working with really vulnerable people. Hey, you need this vaccine. If you don't get it, you're putting our people at risk. And
that's something my wife works at a nursing home too. And it's been interesting seeing the regulations that have come down for that, especially at the state level. I can see that happening there for sure.
And so if you're a Christian and the government says, hey, you have to get this vaccine, like you have to get it, what should a Christian's response be to that? I just love grilling you with questions kind of out of nowhere. That's one of the funnest things, I think.
I think you'd have to figure out whether you think it is healthy for you or not. Because the part of that is not like, do you think the vaccine will work or not? It's disobeying the government in Romans 13 and that stuff. That's the part of that question there. You have to remember that you are responsible for your body that's been given to you by God. And that opens up a whole other can of worms, like eating right, exercising, make sure you're getting enough sleep and all that. But for this case, I don't know. I don't feel See, we talked about this in our last video. We did, I think it was for your channel, I think, Mark,
Yeah.
where just because God ordains the office, but not necessarily the individual.
Okay. Yeah.
And so when you take a look at it at that angle, it would be the individual that's using the power of the office to mandate it, but it's still the individual. And in that sense, like, I think it'd be fine to skip out on it. You know what I mean?
So really, you're saying like it's an illegitimate
Yeah.
decree, and so you can ignore it. And there's Christians that say, hey, if the government gives an unreasonable decree, then you can ignore it. But
Mhm.
there's other Christians that'll say, no, you still have to follow it. Like, just for instance, something just off the wall, hey, if the government, if Biden Harris woke up one day and they said, hey, everyone has to wear clown shoes, would you wear clown shoes the next day? Would Christians have to wear clown shoes? I mean, will we say no, that's an illegitimate decree, you don't have to follow it? Or Romans 13, hey, the government's spoken, it's not telling you to sin, to steal, or
Yeah.
kill, it's just telling you to put on clown shoes. What do you do there?
I don't know. I think it depends on how you interpret Romans 13.
And so it goes back to, I mean, it's important for Christians to know scripture and to go
Mhm.
to those passages and, hey, how do they apply to these situations? And a good thing to come out of this really will be Christians will have to know their Bible and how to live a life that honors God during these things.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts other than that?
It's going to be interesting. I think looking at January and beyond, what's going to happen there. I think the church as a whole is going to come up against a whole bunch of challenges that we have not had to come up against in the past. And it's the church at this time needs to first off make sure there's no disunity in the church more now than ever, in like the American church history, not the whole church history, because they've needed unity in other parts too. But we're going to be coming up against stuff that will challenge our faith, will challenge what scripture says. And if there's disunity in the church, Jesus said when he was accused of being the king of demons, that a house divided cannot stand. The church will not be able to stand if there's division. So that as a church and religious freedom, we need to, and other stuff like that, we just need to be prepared for what's to come. I think it's, Mark, you said this, I think in the previous video, but it's a lot closer to us than what we originally thought. Like, it's not a couple decades away, but maybe a couple months away. So,
and even just a year ago, who would have thought that we would be where we are like right now? It's snowballing, it's going faster than we could ever think. We're going to get started, and I'm going to actually cut to the second thing we're going to talk about, and that is freedom of religion. He's talking about the Second Amendment. I'm talking about the First Amendment, and that is freedom of religion and freedom of press too. We'll talk about censorship later. So right now we see in churches in California, hey, they're being fined, and some of them are being fined like tens of thousands of dollars. Some I've seen are being fined even hundreds of thousands of dollars for meeting during the pandemic with all these health mandates. And in New York City, I just looked this up. I don't know if it's today this is happening, but it was happening for a while. In New York City, fines can be $15,000 a day for any mass gatherings. And so that would include churches. And in mass gatherings, it's over, I don't know if it's 100 or it's so many people, then you get up to a $15,000 fine.
Yeah, there's quite a few mega churches there too, though, where they're having to work with that. So,
and so the question is, what challenges will churches face in the future over this pandemic with religious freedom issues, really?
we mentioned this in the video for my channel, but we touched on it. Whatever happens with this election, this election is, what are we at? Almost a week. We're 6 days into this election and still figuring out some stuff, but they still haven't figured out House and Senate, all the seats and stuff. But if this presidency goes forward with Biden and Harris, they're looking at enacting a bunch of different COVID regulations and everything like that. And it's going to be interesting to say the least. I know, like, if you applied what California does to North Dakota, that our church would not be able to afford it, and we'd probably, I don't know what we do at that time. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, but I know that if we tried to meet that, we wouldn't be able to afford that.
And so, like right now, we see that certain states, your more kind of liberal states and stuff, they'll do the fines and everything. With the president, the current administration that we have, they haven't been finding churches. They haven't been going, after churches for that, because, he'll say churches are essential. Maybe we'll see. It'll be interesting with the next administration what they do, and who knows. But it's something that, Christians, we have to think about for sure. And this is in Montana. We've got our governor, he put up a website to report businesses that do not follow the COVID-19 health mandates. And so, like me, if I wanted to, I could go, and I call it a snitch line, and I could go snitch on businesses. This person's not wearing a mask. Hey, there weren't social distancing stuff. Hey, paths weren't marked, different guidelines like that. I could go look up and there's a lot of guidelines to follow. But I could go snitch on them, report them to the website that he sets up. And so that's a little frightening, but we could even take that and apply it to churches. What's stopping the government from saying, hey, this applies to churches too? If people aren't wearing masks or following the guidelines, you can report them, and they'll face, at first it seems like it's a warning, and then if it continues, then there's fines and stuff. Any thoughts on that?
Well, does that count for churches too already?
I don't think so. I think there'd be an uproar in Montana if it did.
Yeah.
But it said businesses when I saw the headlines and everything. And of course, it's pretty famous because New York set up something similar, but then people started sending pictures, like inappropriate pictures and stuff, and just and false stuff. And it was taken down pretty quickly because of that. And other states have tried, and with more or less success, but now I don't think Montana's thing has pictures. You just report what happened or whatever. But that's kind of what's in the future. I mean, it could be done on a federal level. Hey, people aren't following the guidelines. You can file a report, or maybe there's a website or something, and snitch, or report your neighbor for that kind of thing, or your church for not following the guidelines. Because there's, in our rural communities in Montana and North Dakota, I'm sure there's a lot of churches that over half, maybe 90%, aren't wearing masks when they meet for church and everything. And then there's other churches, I think, that a lot of them do wear masks. So any other thoughts there?
I don't know. Like, if they start doing federal law, like you're saying, then they can start threatening churches by saying, we're going to take away your tax exempt status. And for North Dakota, what we're tax exempt on is our property tax. And that doesn't go from the state, that goes from the county. This is what I've learned in the past few years here. And so when it comes to that, they can threaten us for that, which, I mean, for the most part, we could survive that, like having to pay a fine and still being able to meet.
Well, and that's kind of a big deal, because I mean, if you give money for missionaries or
that's
things like that, then missionaries, they're not getting as much funding. And I don't know exactly how it impacts all that, but it's kind of a big deal even there. But I think of the CARES Act with hey, businesses can get money for certain things. And I've heard reports of, there was one church that got like $1 million when they filed for that. And there's some churches that have gotten funding through the CARES Act, the PPP Act or whatever, the part of it. But
we stayed away from that.
Yeah. And
because it wasn't exactly clear whether, in the wording, it seemed like the government could come back later and ask for that money back, type of thing, in the wording that they were presenting. And we're like,
well, what's stopping them from saying, though, hey, you're not following our guidelines, you're not putting people's safety at risk, their health at risk. And so if you want that money, you have to follow these guidelines and everything. It's a way, I think, for the government to coerce and everything. Let's go on.